everyone. Welcome to These Aren't the Nerds You Are Looking For podcast. Today is what we're calling episode 0. I am Kevin Horde.
Lorenzo here.
And what we're going to be doing is just kind of introducing ourselves a little bit more and kind of giving you a backstory of where this podcast came from. So, a little bit about me. I am just a regular guy from the Midwest, Missouri specifically. So, there's that. Lorenzo?
I'm also from the Midwest, but I currently reside in Santa Ana, California. So I made my move out here in 2013 when I was 26. So, if you want to do the math. But yeah, I've been living out here since then. But it's then an interesting story on how Kevin and I met. We actually met at Star Wars Celebration in Orlando last year, April 2017. So, yeah, you want to get into that?
Yeah, so basically, if anyone remembers Star Wars Celebration Orlando 2017, there was a Last Jedi panel on Friday morning. So they opened the line to get into the queue at, 6:30, 7 o'clock p.m. on Thursday night. And so it was just happenstance that we ended up in line next to each other, and I guess I'm an outgoing enough person that I can at least talk to people around me. So we just kind of started talking after several hours of standing in line at the Orange County Convention Center around the outside of the building.
Yeah, because to set up the timeline, too, because we're talking like we got in line around 6 to 7 p.m. Thursday night for an event that was going to occur at 11 a.m. the next morning.
The following morning.
Yeah, so we had some time. We had some time to kill. So, I will say, like, Kevin here is kind of the first person that I've talked to at a convention. I've been to a lot of them, but he is the first one that we kind of kept in touch afterwards, right?
Right.
And I, it's just interesting to look back at the happenstance of just getting in line at that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
it was one of those things where a buddy of mine dropped me off at the front door because I was like, all right, I'll scope out this line, see what's going on. He was going to head back to the hotel and chill for a little bit and then come meet me in line later. And I got there and I'm like, all right, there's already a line, because they didn't even open the doors to let you inside until 9 o'clock at night?
Or something like that.
Something like
even
that.
Officially speaking, like, a line wasn't even supposed to form until 10. Like, the official word was like, if a line formed, they would try and like disperse the line.
Right.
But at 6 o'clock, that line was wrapped around the building, so clearly they didn't do a good job of that. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was, like I said, I got dropped off at the front door, and I'm like, all right, there's a line. Looked like there was a couple hundred people, and I walked down to the corner of the building, made a left, and it kept going, and then I walked down to the next corner and made the next turn, and it kept going, and then there was another turn, and it was, the line was probably, I don't know, a quarter mile, half mile long at that point. And, it was thousands of people that were there already. So,
yeah. And then I was just there by myself, too. And then you were behind me, right? You got in line, like, right behind me, yeah?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So, because I was just there by myself completely. I flew from California to Orlando by myself. I was celebrating my 30th birthday. But I knew my trip was going to be so crazy and event-filled that I didn't really want to kind of put other people under that kind of crazy convention-level stress.
Yeah, it can take a lot out of you.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult when you're traveling with other people and kind of coordinating, getting everything together, and particular interest of, what do you want to do at this time? What do I want to do at this time? What's going on? And not everyone is made to stand in line for 4 hours to get through a door and ultimately to sleep on a concrete floor.
Yeah, like that's the best case scenario too, because like San Diego Comic-Con, they just make you sleep outside of the convention center all night. People walking by, your stuff's just out in the open. You have a tent or sleeping bags or whatever you got. So it is pretty fancy being inside on a cold concrete floor.
Right.
That's the level of crazy we're working with here.
Right. I did the same thing at, I guess it was Celebration 4. No, couldn't have been 4, because 4 was in Anaheim, right?
I'm not sure.
So, I think so. So, it must have been like Celebration 5. It was the first one that they did in Orlando. And it was, I feel like it was in August, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not August. Either way, it was hot as hell, and it was outside, and that was not as pleasant of a camping out experience as actually being able to get inside, have shelter, have bathrooms.
Yes, having access to the restrooms is always ideal.
Right, yeah, that was definitely a good thing for sure. But I guess we were fortunate enough to get stuck in this long ass line together and strike up a conversation and be able to be conversational and friendly enough that it wasn't a terrible experience going through this ordeal.
And then even then, there's I still feel like maybe it's just on my end, I feel like there's still a few steps beyond that. It wasn't like we exchanged numbers and we're like, hey, let's be friends.
Right, yeah, it was, we exchanged numbers, but it was more like, hey, let me get your number so if I get out of line to go pee, I can find you again and find my place.
Exactly. Yeah, because the line on occasion would kind of move forward just because, people were getting compact, people were packed, in the morning-ish, and by morning I mean 4 a.m. or something like that. People are starting to pack up their bags and stuff, so, there was a lot of space that was getting filled, so... Yeah,
and there was also there was also the opposite of that happen in the evening, because everybody files in and then they're, you're pretty close to shoulder with however many other people are in the line, and the switchbacks inside were, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 people wide.
Yeah. Completely.
So then when everybody got their pouch couches and chairs and inflatable mattresses and right, and everything, it started pushing people further back and further back. So
because everybody's natural instinct is to keep walking forward until the person in front of you stops.
Right.
But the problem is you're taking up the space of 1 square foot when you need
enough
10
space
square feet to drop your air mattress or whatever.
And there was people that legit had air mattresses and
blankets, pillows,
comforters, pillows, all kinds of stuff. I had one backpack with one blanket and, whatever other stuff I had, like the convention booklet or
you had
my phone charger.
You at least had the blanket. I had a jacket and my backpack with a book and a bottle of water.
Right.
Which I remember trying to lie on my pillow. I was trying to use my backpack as a pillow, very unsuccessfully. Then at one point, I was on the book that was inside the backpack just to have my head on something. Mm-hmm. That was unsuccessful, and I think I remember putting my head in the backpack.
Yeah, I remember in the morning you were like, man, I woke up and I was inside my backpack and I didn't know what was going on.
Well, yeah, because they don't turn off the lights. So you have these fluorescent lights at 100%. They don't dim it. They don't do anything. Also, there are people that are up all night. So it's just a nonstop conversation of thousands of people that's going on around you. So the voices never quiet down.
And plus there was dozens of people that were lightsaber dueling
Oh,
all
yeah.
night long. So
Yeah.
it was just the constant plastic to plastic clash of force effect sabers.
Was it that night with you that? Actually, no. It would have been, I think, the night before where there were straight up like lightsaber duels going on, where
No, there was definitely lightsaber duels going on that night.
and it was like a full on tournament style, right? Like people were lining up with their lightsabers, and then like, you know, whoever lost would move on, winner would stay until they lost and switch out. Like
Right, and then just get like back in the end of the line.
yeah. And
I
then it was
guess-
just continually going, and you know, you had your circle of people going, "Oh yeah, no,"
Yeah.
and I'm just head in my backpack. Just I remember waking up at one point, just going like, "What the fuck is that noise?" And then you or somebody was like, "Yeah, they're dueling over there." I'm like, "Oh, of course."
Right.
And I just like roll
Like-
over, grumble to myself, like,
Get used to it. It's gonna be taking place for the next 4 hours.
yeah, exactly.
We did have one super cool thing that happened is that Ryan Johnson came down to you can't even say the convention floor because it wasn't the convention floor. It was just
the Q hall,
hall. What did we decide it was? Hall D?
Hall D, I do believe it was. Yeah.
I think is what it's called. And made his way through part of the line and happened to be just like one switchback away from us. So
And
that
even
was
then,
pretty cool.
even then, there was still like 15 minutes of like we could see at the other end of the hall that there was a crowd and a lot of commotion.
There definitely was some commotion, and for a while we thought that a couple of nerds had actually broke into a good old-fashioned fist fight
Yes.
instead of just like a lightsaber duel
Yeah.
because there was a rush of people and
And like
talk of
security. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
and
saw
some other
security
stuff
over
going
there.
on.
So like when you see security at like what was it, like midnight, something like that? Maybe even later?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, like when you see security at midnight, you're like, "Oh shit, what are they doing here?" You know. So and then eventually after 15 minutes people started making their way, like the commotion was moving, which was odd, right? So then finally eventually the word had spread that it was definitely Ryan Johnson making his way down. So then I hopped over.
Because it's not like you could see him over everybody's heads because he's, one head shorter than everybody anyway.
He's a little guy. And I'm a short guy. And even I was kind of surprised, but but yeah, he was really nice. He signed our badges, or by signed, I mean
Scribbled.
quickly squiggled a Sharpie across it.
I think Lorenzo's actually has something that looks like an R with some other scribble on it. Mine is just kind of a...
Yours is like just a wave. Somebody just drew a wave across yours. Like
Right.
there was an incantation happening with your Sharpie that was going across your badge, is what was happening.
I believe that to be true.
Yeah, but no, it was really nice, and there was still some order. Like he wasn't as flocked. The security did a good job, kind of keeping some perimeter around him.
Yeah, and from what I understand, that wasn't security from the event. That was, that was his personal group of people that were with him.
Nice.
Because I actually ran into one of the guys that was with him that night after the Last Jedi panel outside, and he was cool to talk to as well, but I was like, you're full of shit, dude. You don't know Ryan Johnson, And he was like, showed me a picture with him, and he was like, yeah, me and Ryan like grew up together and blah blah and all this stuff. So,
well, that's cool. Yeah, to have
it
your
was
actual
pretty cool.
friends kind of keeping guard for you. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
So,
yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know, where do you want to go from that? 'Cause
why don't you kind of tell me and tell everybody else, like, how'd you get into Star Wars to the point where you're gonna fly all the way across the country by yourself to celebrate your 30th birthday party at a Star Wars convention?
Yeah, that's a good thing to talk about. Definitely, I am one of those that when I grew up, my dad definitely got the VHS set, and I'm talking the not special edition one. It's like the last home release of...
Is it like the box set with... So it was the new artwork on the cassette sleeves, or the VHS sleeves, I guess.
Yes.
And then they all fit into a single box with Darth Vader on it.
Yep.
And there
It's
was
like mostly black, but it's like half of his face.
Yeah.
And then
it's like black and blue, unless
Yeah.
you had like the widescreen version,
Something
which was
like
like
that.
black and gold or something.
Yeah, because like it's like on A New Hope, it's half of Darth Vader's face. On half of Empire, it's half of Yoda's face. And then Return of the Jedi, it's half of a Stormtrooper's face because they couldn't figure out anybody more important to put on the cover.
Yeah, like Han and Carbonite or something would have been cool.
Or, maybe Luke.
Yeah,
so,
I've heard of that guy.
that guy. But even then, I have memories of watching. Oddly enough, like Return of the Jedi is one of my more formed memories first of it being on like TBS or something like that, And my dad stopped changing the channels. We're talking early 90s, and then I would have been in about third grade or something like that. Second or third grade, and then that VHS box set came out, and then I just got addicted to watching those movies over and over again.
Yeah, I want to say that we had originally like the original Star Wars: A New Hope taped off the TV, and it had like a thunderstorm warning on it, like flashing in the bottom corner, and I honestly don't remember if we had all three bootlegged at that point or what, but I remember when the box set came out and we got it, and I was just super excited, and it was that series of movies that I could watch just over and over and over and over and over again. And then when I got older, because I'm a little bit older than Lorenzo, so I remember watching Star Wars back in the 80s, and then in the 90s, the late 90s when I was in high school, like I went to this comic book shop and they had a copy of A New Hope, the novel. And I was like, holy shit, these are fucking books too? Like, I can read this story?
Yeah.
So I convinced my dad that, like, I totally needed that. He was like, nah, we got the movie at home. Like, you're good. And I was like, nah, give me the book, give me the book, give me the book. So I don't think we did that day. And then later, I don't know, for my birthday or something, I think he had gotten, like, all three of them for me.
Nice.
And then not too long later, like, my mom had bought the first official Star Wars Lego set, the Snowspeeder. And, I'm like a sophomore, junior in high school, and I got it for Christmas, and that just, like, unleashed this flood of, holy shit, there's tons of Lego out there. I'm going to start buying all this Lego. I'm going to start buying action figures and all kinds of stuff. Because when I was a kid, it was like, yeah, I played with Lego and I played Star Wars with Lego, but it was everything else. I could rip the wheels off of the motorcycles from the police set and like stick something on the front. And that was like the speeder bike and all kinds of stuff. So it was... Go ahead.
No, what's funny is I don't think I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to think back. I don't remember, like, other than lightsabers. I bought all the lightsabers, but when it comes to toys, I don't remember ever getting into them until Episode 1 came out.
I didn't start heavily collecting the 3 3/4 line until Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
And like, I had picked up a couple and I was like, these are cool. And I was working at this clothing store at the mall, and like this other dude that worked there came in with like this big ass bag from Toys R Us, and he had like 10 or 15 of them. And I was like, oh, you fucking asshole. Like, I am totally going to have more than you. And it just snowballed from there. And, now I have like I have hundreds of them, and it's somewhat ridiculous, but it's enjoyable. Well, to me anyway. So,
because even then, I know you have a lot of the books, and again, I never got into any of the expanded universe books, until the post Disney takeover.
Right.
Like, I'm reading some of the books now
until
not
new canon.
Yeah, Yeah, once I heard like, hey, that old canon's scratch. We're gonna.
I was so pissed.
I know, because well, you invested that time. I was just like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't have to worry about that giant mishmash of endless expanse, right? Like, I was like, okay,
Right.
this is manageable. This is manageable. I can do this. And then, sure enough, 2 years later now, I'm still like, oh my God, there are too many books. I can't keep up.
Yeah.
Slow down.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how much, I guess, content is just put out in the Star Wars universe now.
Yeah.
Because going back to when I was a kid, it was just this. It was this small little thing that some of us nerds had like in our back pocket,
Yeah.
where it was like these 3 movies, and there was a little bit of expanded universe back then, and there was some video games, computer games, and like that was it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously toys and toys and toys from like the late 70s, early 80s, but then there was that dark time between Jedi and Attack or fucking the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
That there was more of a lull, and that's when I got more into the EU and the expanded universe.
Yeah, see, like, I think for me, I think even my delay versus yours, I think kind of what I was just at that point where like every step along the way kind of was like the next natural step. And so like when that VHS box set came out, I want to say it's like somewhere between like 93, 95, right?
Uh-huh.
And then
Probably.
you get to 97. So like I'm watching those VHS for a couple years, and then really like my obsession should have kind of like died down and been replaced with anything else, But then the special editions came out.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, these are really cool. So I get the special editions. I start devouring those, And then somewhere like right before that even, that's when like the Shadow of the Empire video game came out too. Right?
Yeah, that was the like the big first multimedia Star Wars project.
Yeah.
Because there was the game, and there was like a novel
Like the
tie-in,
book,
and there
yeah.
was books and comics and like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So wherever that fell, that was like another one of those like kind of little steps. I was like, hey, don't forget, this is a thing, Lorenzo. Like, and then I remember playing Shadow of the Empire a lot on N64.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and then special edition happens. That keeps me going for a second, and then Phantom Menace drops, and then yeah, that wasn't a great movie, but I was like 12 at the time, and just the fact that like, oh, there are new Star Wars, like these are new things.
I love the Phantom Menace. I love it.
boy.
I absolutely love it. And I don't know, man. Like, it's out of the prequels for sure. It's the one that I've seen the most.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also the only one that I, up until recently, had on VHS. And so when I'm working in the garage or whatever, I've got a TV VCR combo that I can just put it in, and it can just play on a loop pretty much. So, needless to say, I've worn out that tape and like pulled the tape apart and like did my own home surgery, taped it back together and all kinds of stuff. So, I don't know. I really enjoy that movie. I recently watched like the Phantom Edit on, I guess, YouTube. One of them. There's several out there, and it breezes all the way through episode 1 like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was just sad.
But I mean, this is a whole different conversation for another time, but I in looking back, appreciating what episode 1 did was it was the beginning of the discussion of special editions and Phantom Menaces, of kind of like who holds ownership over Star Wars, and if that's George Lucas's vision,
Right.
And as fans, like if we don't like it, that's one thing, but do we get to call George Lucas like a fucking monster for it, sort of thing. So I find that interesting, having grown up with that,
Mm-hmm.
where, as people probably hear as we keep doing this podcast, as the entire premise of this is watching Clone Wars and kind of just discussing it afterwards. But there's a thing definitely right now, as we're recording this, a few months after Last Jedi came out, where people just get aggressively hyperbolic about their opinions on anything, whether it's The Last Jedi or, again, just when we're recording this, like right after Black Panther came out.
Right.
People have strong opinions, and, but for me, growing up around that, I was always careful to form strong arguments before I said something, right? Because people are really quick to just say, like, oh, it's just an opinion, man. Like, like my opinions can't be wrong. But look, to me, opinions can be wrong, because opinions still need to be backed up, right? You can't just say you don't like something just because you don't like it. You kind of just, even if it's just like one little reason, like, if you don't like a certain food because you find it too bitter, right? That's at least more than just like, no, I don't want to try that just because, right?
Right.
Like, shut the fuck up and just try it. Like,
And that's a fine opinion to have if whatever said food is actually bitter.
Yeah.
But if it's not bitter and you're like, I don't like it because it's bitter, like, your opinion is false.
But that's what I'm saying.
Point.
Yeah. Like, opinions can be wrong,
And I think what a lot of people are kind of the trend in movie-going experiences and maybe just intellectual property in general is that there's fewer just kind of common fans that are like, yeah, it's cool, whatever, I'll go see that movie or whatnot. And people are just like seriously trying to take solid ownership of a specific thing. And it's like, well, that doesn't happen in my Star Wars.
Yeah. But it's not your Star Wars. Like, you're not the filmmaker. You didn't make it. Like, there are people being paid lots of money to put this together, like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, that's one thing that we will be doing is giving our opinion out there for free. And if you like it, great. If you don't, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, speaking of which, where would you say that this podcast originated from? Like, where, we talked about how you and I met each other at Celebration Orlando, and growing up, Star Wars was, part of our desired entertainment. So from those two things, what got us here?
Well, all credit due, you are the one that broached me with this idea, Wait, no, what are you asking? Sorry. In terms of...
yeah, just kind of in terms of how did we come to decide to do this? And I guess to our listeners, this project that we're working on, I eventually approached Lorenzo and said, hey, what do you think about doing a Star Wars podcast? And he said, what's your idea? Let me think it over. And I had been listening to these minute-by-minute podcasts, like, super heavily, and I was like, dude, like, we should do the Clone Wars. And Lorenzo was like, no, that's like 10,000 fucking episodes. Like, that's way too many. Like,
yeah, and the other thing is, to, I guess, giving, so that this makes a little bit more sense, my day job is producing media content and podcasts and audio stuff. So Kevin was kind of aware of that, and then, right? And then you approached me.
I think so.
Yeah, you were kind of aware that this was kind of my wheelhouse in terms of putting this stuff together already.
I knew that you did something. I thought it was more like social media management.
Yeah.
At the time.
Mm-hmm. Which is definitely not. I'm so not good at that. We have another guy here who does that much better than I could. I've had to do that here at work.
Right.
But no, so yeah, so that is kind of what I do. I record podcasts, I shoot videos for a website, and I throw that all together, and then somebody else takes care of it in terms of like where it goes on media and social media and all that stuff.
Right.
But in terms of the actual production, I am on that. So that said, I am always very careful with my free time because I very much do value my free time. It's not an issue of whether or not I thought the project was good or bad, because Kevin is not the first. You're not the first person to approach me with some kind of idea or project that somebody kind of wanted me to help out with in some form. You know, maybe not a full-blown podcast to embark on, but still, you know, somebody wanted me to like write a script with them and then make a movie, and I'm like, with what fucking money, man? Like, you know. But so I am very careful with my free time, especially when it comes to doing more of the thing I do 8 hours a day, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But you know, so Kevin said it. You know, I was very careful. I didn't outright say yes or anything. He presented the idea, and the more he kind of talked about it, you know, the more I was kind of feeling that there was something about Kevin, I guess, to begin with, that our friendship, you know, is only possible in this new media age where he and I were just texting back and forth, right? Like,
right.
In terms of in-person, face-to-face time, Orlando was it, right?
Right.
And yet, through just constantly talking back and forth across the country, you know, we still formed this bond. And then when he kind of was telling me this idea, part of my hesitation at first was beyond just this is going to take a lot of time to put in, was, to be honest, like I had watched Clone Wars once, and then I just kind of moved on with my life, right? Like,
right, like everybody else did.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of kind of going back and revisiting the Clone Wars, which, you know, like I don't hate as a show. It has its good episodes and it has its bad episodes. It
and
lasted.
We will definitely get into that.
Yes. But, you know, it's a show that lasted 6 seasons. And like any show that lasts 6 seasons, not every episode's going to be a winner, right? So, but Kevin kind of came with this approach to just take each episode one by one, right? And approach
one episode at a time. Yeah. And I thought that the way that we should do it is looking at it as one ginormous 125 episode overarching story. And we can look at things from the viewpoint of this is one long cohesive story and we're breaking it into small segments and kind of attack it from there.
Yeah. And then I think the other interesting part too is that, you know, in talking with Kevin, not all of our opinions line up completely. So I thought that would be a lot more interesting as well, such as Kevin's weird love for episode 1.
Right.
Yes. You know, but Kevin's aware of it, I think. Right.
Absolutely.
Yes. That not everybody shares that opinion on episode 1. Which, funny enough, episode 1 is not my least favorite Star Wars. So, you know,
I actually made a list of from favorite to least favorite, and it was before The Last Jedi came out, but it included fucking shit. It included the Clone Wars, it included Rogue One, it included The Force Awakens. It probably even had like the holiday special on it, and I don't remember what ended up in last place. I will have to find that and present that information later at some point in time.
Okay, well, because I was just going to ask you, if you just to give people a glimpse into your mind, and then I will do the same, what would be your ranking of the movies? And we're counting the 10 that have been theatrically released. So that's 8 mainline episodic ones, Rogue One, and then the Clone Wars theatrical release movie.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just going to fire off a list to you, no explanation, and we'll just take it at that. We can get into the details of it later.
Yeah.
But mine goes as follows. Rogue One, Episode 3, Episode 5, Episode 1, Episode 7, The Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, Episode 4, Episode 2, The Clone Wars.
Okay. Interesting list. Interesting. Okay. Here's my list. And it's going to be a lot different. Damn. Mine goes Empire Strikes Back, Rogue One, A New Hope, The Last Jedi, The Force Awakens, Revenge of the Sith, then Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars. So we both really didn't enjoy the Clone Wars as much as the other ones.
Well, I mean, you gotta have a caboose to your train. So I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy the Clone Wars, but I obviously enjoy the Clone Wars enough to be undertaking this project.
Yeah.
But
and
definitely details of what I like and what I don't like will come in many future episodes.
Yeah, we'll get to those. So that one will definitely get its own attention later, obviously. But if just as a whole, what kind of influences your ranking in terms of
a lot of what influences where these things fell on this list is what I have seen recently and how often I have watched it. Like A New Hope falls pretty far down on my list, but I think that that's because I've seen it 250 times.
Mm-hmm.
So going back and watching it, I've seen it so many times that I don't really have to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I can just kind of put it on, and it's a double-edged sword where I can put it on and I know what's going on. Like, it's not background noise, but I know the story. I know what's going on. I know what's coming up next. I know what parts I like. I know what parts I question, and I've just seen it so much that things that are newer than that tend to be higher on the list just because of them being new,
Mm-hmm.
me being able to find new information or glean different things from repeated viewings because I haven't seen it as often.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because for me, I'm definitely looking at it from just an absolute filmmaking standpoint.
Right.
Filmmaking / storytelling, right?
Right.
And that's where to kind of pick on one to create the example. Like that's why like Attack of the Clones falls really far down.
Yeah, I had not seen Attack of the Clones in a while, and then probably 6 months ago I rewatched it, and I was like, okay, I've been sticking up for this movie for 10 years or more, and I know the nitpicks that people have about it, and the complaints that everybody says, like, this is why episode 2 sucks and all that stuff, and I can see some of those things now that I can understand where certain gripes are coming from.
Yeah.
But had I not watched it 6 months ago, it probably would have been higher on the list.
Interesting. Yeah, because I find that interesting that for you it's the rewatches that can influence it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you can't like change your opinion over time. I just find it interesting because for me, I still have an enjoyment of Attack of the Clones. If I do a marathon or if it's just something that's on, I still will watch it, right?
Right.
But a lot of the core issues I was having with it back in 2002, and at the time I was like 15 years later, I still have those overarching problems, but
right.
I just deal with it at this point, right? Like, because it's Star Wars, I'm gonna watch it, and it forms the overarching story. But then, for me to rank it so low, it's because of like the movie itself is kind of it's choppy, right? Like in terms of storytelling, it's
Right.
for me. It's not even like a lot of people pick on Hayden Christensen's acting. Like I don't even focus on that, right? It's really just the storytelling mechanics of it, you know. And that's where I find like Empire and especially like Rogue One do really well, you know.
Yeah, Rogue One I really feel is phenomenal. Like, to be honest, when Force Awakens came out, I went and saw it opening night, and got out of the movie theater, and I was fucking disappointed. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I didn't enjoy that. Like, that wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it. I was like, this movie sucks. And then went back and watched it again, and I was like, all right, totally digging this Kylo Ren guy. Like, I can get into this. And then came out on, DVD Blu-ray, and I watched it, I don't know, probably 6 times in a weekend. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then, but when I saw Rogue One, like, I walked out of the movie theater, and I just, the only thing I had to say was like, that was fun, that was awesome, like, I want to watch it again, like, instantly.
It's funny you say that with like Force Awakens, because again, I try and watch everything as objectively as possible, because I watch, scores of movies every year, like new movies, not rewatches or anything. Like I end up watching like 100 movies each year. So, like when you watch that much, again, it's like, yeah, there's a subjectiveness to it, but a lot of people ask my opinion. So again, you're going to all catch a theme here. Like, so people ask my opinion. So like I provide evidence of why I liked it, what I didn't like, but Force Awakens sat in this weird zone where I remember being in the theater that first night. I got like a 7:30 screening. It was the earliest 2D screening that I could get. And I was actually back in Michigan to watch that with my family and stuff. But as it was playing, I kind of had like this weird out of body experience where it was just like, the movie was playing, but I guess I was like just dead to it because I didn't believe it was really happening.
Right.
Sort of thing. So it took like a second and third watch to kind of absorb, like you said, like, understanding who Kylo Ren is or who Rey is, and kind of being able to become attached to these characters that we know will become important,
Right.
Because like other movies will do that in one movie, right? Like, you watch a movie, you fall in love with the characters, they feel like they're your friends. And I'm not saying Force Awakens didn't do that. Again, it was just like my brain's disconnect of like, holy shit, we're sitting in this theater, and this is after all of these years of build-up, it's finally fucking happening.
Yeah, and I think part of it for me was I was such a big fan of the expanded universe. So Force Awakens is the movie that took all of the expanded universe away from me. So I had a bone to pick with it from the beginning, just from the outset. Like,
just pretend
it's your fucking fault. Like, so
no, just pretend somewhere right after like Return of the Jedi, something happened where somebody created like a timeline A and timeline B, like in Back to the Future Part 2. Right. Just pretend like there's like Marty went back and like gave Biff the like he stole the almanac, and Biff then sent it off to somebody else.
So like Kylo Ren went back and
tried to give his child self future intel,
right,
on the Resistance essentially, and then that skis off like a timeline B that we are now watching with Disney.
I feel you.
Just accept it on those terms.
I think I would be more okay with that.
Yeah, just think of it like that. Like, I'm just gonna try and put the warm old EU blanket on you. Like,
yeah. I like my EU.
But as we move on towards kind of wrapping this intro up, I think one of the main things we want to do with this episode, and why we're calling it essentially like episode 0, we kind of want to keep the numbering in line with the episodes, but we still wanted to kind of give some background information and just some context into who Kevin and myself are.
Right.
So that,
and where we came from,
Yeah.
and what we're doing moving forward.
Yeah.
So, kind of the structure of what the actual episodes of content will be is, I don't know if we mentioned it today, but we're attacking this chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
So, episode 1 of These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For actually covers season 2, episode 16. And that particular episode is called Cat and Mouse. And then after that, it jumps back to season 1, episode 16. And so it jumps around in the release date quite a bit at the beginning, and then kind of smooths out for a little bit. But we'll do just kind of a little recap of what happens in the episode, and then we'll get a little more in depth into what we liked, what we didn't like, questions that we had, and just kind of try to hash out back and forth, like kind of make sense of all this in the grand scope of this whole story, and then maybe a little synopsis of what's coming with the next episode, and that'll be it. And we're shooting for around 45 minutes. Some maybe a little longer than that, some maybe a little shorter. So
yeah, but again, we just want to kind of provide context so you understand as we approach each episode moving forward. Now that you kind of have a sense of who Kevin and myself are too in relationship to Star Wars, because
right,
I think my main goal is just to make sure that we aren't, like I expressed earlier, we're going to have opinions, but will we have opinions that are sound with evidence backing them up, based on what we see in the show or feel that we aren't seeing the show, things like that. So hopefully this kind of sparks interesting conversation, around this expansive part of the universe that kind of nestles in between two movies, but
right, and it's all just food for thought,
Yeah.
So hey, if you agree, great. If you don't, that's probably even better.
Yeah.
So we're open to feedback, and we want to hear what you guys have to say also.
Mm-hmm. We have so as we're wrapping this up, we set up a Twitter account that would be @NotTheNerds.
Correct.
Instagram is also the same. We have a Facebook, which is @NotTheNerdsPodcast. So if you just go facebook.com/NotTheNerdsPodcast.
Correct.
Email we have set up is
NotTheNerdsPodcast at gmail.com.
Yep. So NotTheNerdsPodcast@gmail.com, and then if you have any opinions for what we should do, what we should talk about, something we might have missed in an episode, we can always address them in future episodes, no problem as well. But I think we have a good foundation here to move forward. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Okay. And one last thing, I think we're shooting for one a week, just about, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
One a week, and we're potentially looking at Wednesday releases.
Yeah.
So
if you're listening to this and you saw, episode what we called episode -1, this one and the next one, it's this is just kind of the first round, and then after that we're gonna go for like a one a week sort of thing. So,
right, but we wanted to have kind of a couple under our belt before we put it out to the internet.
Yeah.
So that
so also
we could figure out our recording schedule and
style,
whatnot.
or even just to get Kevin and myself comfortable with each other, even so.
Right.
Because he's in Missouri, I'm in California. We're doing this via Skype actually, so and hopefully our audio equipment is good enough that we don't sound like shit too, so that's not annoying. As I say that, also Kevin and I both curse a lot, so I'm gonna throw that out
noticed,
right now.
but it's not not PG.
Yeah, we're gonna just make that general announcement now. I'm not saying we're gonna just randomly
don't go out of our way
to
curse.
We're not. But it just kind of is part
We're
of
just-
our vernacular.
Right.
Yeah. So that's just a gentle warning. I'm throwing explicit tags all over this. So, an explicit tag isn't a promise that we're going to curse. It's just more of like a gentle, like, hey, these two dudes say,
Like maybe don't listen, in the car with your kids.
yeah,
Or if you are kids, maybe get your parents' permission
I mean,
first.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
Kevin's
how
a
that
parent.
shit
I'm not a
works.
parent. You do whatever you want. All right. So
That is true.
parents, you do whatever the fuck you want. So raise your kids how you feel. Don't let Kevin tell you what to do.
Unless you're my kid.
Yeah.
Then I get to tell you what to do.
Yeah. So so stop listening, go to bed. Um,
Yeah, so I mean I think that's all we got for today, all we got for this week. So
Yeah.
Just to recap, Twitter at Not the Nerds, and all that shit that Lorenzo said earlier that I can't remember.
Twitter, Instagram, both same hashtag, same username there. Facebook is at Not the Nerds Podcast. Gmail is at nottthenerds@gmail.com. So
Not the Nerds Podcast at gmail.com.
yes, yeah. What am I saying? So yeah, just subscribe, like. I'm gonna throw this on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. I'll try and get it there too. Wherever you're listening to us, write some reviews too, so that we kind of also have an idea of what we're doing right or wrong. Because Kevin and I,
Or at least like reach out to me on Twitter and just let me know that you came across this.
yeah,
Even if you hate it.
Yeah, Kevin's the
That's-
one highly in charge of our Twitter, so he's.
Yeah. So that's all I got
That's it.
for today, and I guess we'll talk to you next
Talk
time.
to you next week. All right, see you everybody. Bye.
Bye, nerds.